Whitehall Boat Yard, and we're repairing blisters in the bottom of a Nicholson 31. These are osmotic blisters. They are not structural, but they do go through the first layer of fiberglass matting. Here you can see where some blisters have been ground away. These are ground away. Now, in preparation to them being filled. The boat is now drying out. I use a pressure washer, wash these blisters out with fresh water, and that will draw the salt water out of the fiberglass. Now, to fill these holes, I tried three different ways of doing it to see which one I prefer. Now, the hull itself is made out of polyester resin. But polyester resin isn't very waterproof. So the first way that I tried was what the many professional yards use and a lot of amateurs, and that's a vinyl ester resin. Vinyl ester resin is a good product. Some boats are made using vinyl ester resin today, and they have much reduced blistering because vinyl ester resin and filler is more watertight. I tried that and mixed it using the putty knife on this little pallet, and I applied it here. You can see that this is the vinyl ester resin. Went on very easily, did not sag, worked quite well. Secondly, I used an epoxy resin. This is epoxy. I used the slow hardener, and I used a low density fairing filler mixed in with the epoxy to thicken it. Looks like that. Mix the proper proportion. You mix the proportions in a cup and add the filler till you get the consistency of peanut butter that you want. This is an example of the epoxy that I mixed up and used. It sags. It's difficult to use and it's difficult to sand, but it is very watertight. So the third product I used, and the product that I tried, and the product which I will use myself, is an interlocks product. It's in an epoxy putty. It's called watertight epoxy filler, and I will use this. It is superior to the other two in its watertightness and in its protective qualities. However, it's more expensive. It is mixed using a putty knife, as the vinyl ester is. It's very easy to mix. It's applied here. It's also very easy to sand. Okay. When the bottom was stripped a month ago, we found 500 blisters on the bottom. We ground those blisters. We ground the bottom paint off first using a grinder, and then a sander like this. When the bottom was clean, then we used a Dremel tool like this with a wheel on it to gouge out the blisters in this manner. When we'd finished gouging out the blisters, we used a Moss system epoxy resin, low viscosity, means it's quite watery, and it will seep into the cavities and the laminations, the voids between the layers of glass. When we had it all when this epoxy dried, then we mixed using interlocks watertight epoxy putty. We mix these in equal amounts. Now, to mix this epoxy putty from Interlocks, and I use exclusively Interlocks products on the bottom of the boat. Mix a equal amount of part A with part B. And you mix those two parts together until they have this institutional green, this color. So it's a, and that doesn't take Here long. We are with the mixed watertight putty. Epoxy can maybe used above or below the water line, and it's with this that I fill these and I fill them a little bit proud, meaning that a little bit stand off, so that when I sand it, it'll sand out. There, that's pretty good. When I sand that, it'll be flush with the hull. And when we're finished with applying it to the cavity and it sets up, we ferret, that means to make it smooth, apply another coat of low viscosity resin, could be West system or the Interlocks epoxy resin, but I like to use Moss system because it's easy to mix. It's mixed 2 parts of the resin to 1 part of the hardener. I'm using fast cure hardener today. Now, the reason I use the Moss system instead of the West system with the pumps are expensive, they're messy, and so on. With the Moss system, I just mark on a plastic container like this. I mark 1 inch and then a 1/2 inch. It's 2 to 1 mixture ratio, so I have 2 parts resin to 1 part hardener. Mix it up and apply it with a brush or with a roller. The last part of the job for the bottom paint is to apply this barrier coat. This is mixed 3 parts to 1 part in a tub, and you apply this with a roller. Now, as you can go back in time with tree rings, you can go back in time with the layers on this boat. You can see the bottom. This is the hull. It's got 1 layer of fiberglass on, or 1 layer of epoxy resin on it. This gray is some of the barrier coat, gray barrier coat. The white is the top coat of barrier coat, and this blue is bottom paint. When you apply the barrier coat, the last coat of this barrier coat, you apply the bottom paint blue to the barrier coat white before the barrier coat is hard. The epoxy barrier coat is very smooth, and the bottom paint can't stick to a cured barrier coat. So there's a thumbprint test you use. When you put the barrier coat on, take your thumb, after it's cured, set for an hour or so, you take your thumb and you apply it to the barrier coat, and if it comes away and leaves a thumbprint, but there isn't on any barrier coat sticking to your thumb, that's the time when you should start applying the first coat of bottom paint, the anti-fouling paint.